Trump panics as plane goes down. 6 American soldiers missing. 6 American crew members are missing tonight over western Iraq. A U.S. KC-135 refueling tanker has gone down during what the Pentagon is calling Operation Epic Fury. At the exact same time, Iranian drones just struck a French military base near airport in northern Iraq, injuring 6 French soldiers. And while American families sit by their phones waiting for news about their loved ones, Donald Trump is posting on social media demanding the Federal Reserve cut interest rates. Two theaters of chaos, one architect and a world watching a superpower unravel its own credibility in real time. This is not a regional skirmish anymore. This is a full spectrum crisis, military, economic, diplomatic, and strategic. It is spreading across the Middle East like a fire with no containment line. Gulf Arab states are quietly opening security negotiations with Iran. India is expressing sympathy toward Tehran. Pakistan has declared solidarity with the Iranian government. Vladimir Putin is banking hundreds of millions of dollars a day selling oil while his supposed friend in the White House begs for cheaper gasoline. And the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most critical choke points on Earth, sits closed to Western shipping but wide open for Iran and China. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how Donald Trump's unauthorized war against Iran went from shock and awe fantasy to strategic catastrophe, why America's closest partners in the region are now hedging their bets on Tehran instead of Washington, and why the global order you thought you understood is being quietly rewritten while most people are still arguing about tweets. Imagine you have a business partner. He keeps making deals without consulting you, picks fights with your most important suppliers. Then, when everything goes sideways, he demands you clean up the mess while he takes credit for things that have not happened yet. How many rounds of that do you survive before you start looking for a new partner? Hold that thought, because that is exactly what Gulf Arab states, NATO allies, and Asian powers are doing right now. Drop your answer in the comments. At what point does reckless leadership cost you your alliances permanently? Let us rewind the clock. Before the first missiles flew, before Operation Epic Fury was even a name on a Pentagon whiteboard, the warnings were everywhere. Congressional leaders warned that striking Iran without authorization would trigger cascading regional escalation. Military planners warned that Iran's drone and missile capabilities could threaten every U.S. installation and allied base within a 1,000-mile radius. Arab states privately warned that they would be the ones paying the price for any American-Israeli offensive. NATO warned that unilateral action would fracture the alliance at the worst possible moment. Donald Trump ignored every single one of them. According to multiple reports, the decision was almost casual. Netanyahu called. Trump agreed. No congressional vote, no coalition building, no State Department preparation, no exit strategy. The most powerful military in human history was unleashed by a man who could not hold a consistent justification for 72 hours. First, it was regime change. Then it was destroying nuclear capabilities. Then it was retribution. Then it was preemptive self-defense. 4 different wars in 3 days. As Congressman Jimmy Gomez put it, if you do not have a clear mission, how do you know your strategy and tactics will achieve the goal? And if you are lying to the American public, how will you ever rally them to support a conflict that is actually necessary in the future? That is where we were. Now let me show you where we are. Receipt number 1, the Gulf realignment. Reuters is now reporting what many analysts feared. The Gulf Arab states are paying the price for America's Iran war. But the real headline is not the price, it is the pivot. According to multiple sources, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait, and other Gulf nations are engaged in serious discussions about new regional security arrangements, not with the United States, with Iran. These are countries that invested billions in Trump properties, funneled money through business deals, participated in Trump's so-called Board of Peace initiative, all on the assumption that Washington would be their shield. Instead, Iranian drones and missiles have struck oil depots in Bahrain, the UAE, and Kuwait. Civilian apartment buildings have been hit. Commercial centers have been targeted. And what did Washington offer? Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent went on television and admitted that America does not have the capabilities to protect shipping in the Strait of Hormuz alone. He called for an international coalition. The same administration that promised America first, America alone, was admitting it could not do it alone. The Gulf states heard that admission. They heard it clearly, and they drew the obvious conclusion. Washington was not offering protection. Washington was offering a liability, and that silence from traditional American partners was deafening. Receipt number 2, the international sympathy pivot. While the White House press secretary Caroline Leavitt was demanding ABC retract a story about Iranian threats to the American homeland, calling it absolutely false and insisting that no such threat from Iran has ever existed, the rest of the planet was moving in a very different direction. India's Prime Minister Modi released a statement confirming he had spoken directly with Iranian President Pezeshkian, expressing what he called deep concern over the escalation of tensions and the loss of civilian lives. He called for dialogue and diplomacy. Not exactly the language of a nation lining up behind Washington, Pakistan declared solidarity with Iran. China, which notably still has access to the Strait of Hormuz even as it remains closed to Western shipping, has positioned itself as Throne's indispensable economic partner. And Iran's Supreme National Security Council Secretary Ali Larijani issued a direct public challenge to Trump. Starting a war is easy, he said, but it cannot be won with a few tweets. We will not relent. The pattern is unmistakable. Nations that Washington expected to support, or at minimum stay silent, are actively sympathizing with Throne. Not because they admire Iran's government, but because Trump's recklessness has made Iran look like the rational actor by comparison. That is not a talking point. That is a diplomatic catastrophe of historic proportions. Receipt number 3, the credibility collapse. This is where the architecture of American power is fracturing in real time. Caroline Leavitt's denial that Iran ever posed a threat to the U.S. homeland was not just a press statement, it was an inadvertent confession, because the entire pretext for this war rested on the claim that Iran posed an imminent danger. But Trump's own intelligence assessments reportedly showed that Iranian ballistic missiles would not be capable of reaching the United States until 2035, and that Iran was not actively pursuing nuclear weapons. So, the White House is now simultaneously arguing that the war was necessary because of a dire Iranian threat, while also arguing that no Iranian threat to the homeland has ever existed. You cannot sustain both positions, and the entire world noticed, as Congressman Gomez said in our conversation, you cannot build a coalition of the willing when everybody thinks you are lying about what you are trying to achieve. You cannot BS your way out of a war. It happens in real time. The consequences are felt by everyone, and the lies are cartoonishly, almost comically easy to expose, which makes America look weaker, not stronger on the international stage. If this analysis is connecting dots you have not seen assembled anywhere else, you are already ahead of most people watching this unfold. Hit subscribe right now. The situation is moving faster than any single outlet can track. You need to be here when the next piece drops. Most leaders, when they launch a military operation, build coalitions first, secure supply lines, establish clear objectives, prepare diplomatic off-ramps. Donald Trump did none of that. He launched a war on impulse, shifted the justification 4 times in 3 days, and then flew to Kentucky to deliver a rambling speech declaring victory while 6 crew members were still missing over Iraq and French soldiers were being evacuated near Erbil. Now look at what Iran has been doing. They closed the Strait of Hormuz to Western shipping, but kept it open for Iranian and Chinese vessels, a selective economic weapon that punishes Washington's allies while rewarding Throne's partners. They launched a coordinated social media campaign mocking Trump, with AI-generated videos labeling him the Epstein president, turning his own vulnerabilities into propaganda. They struck not just American positions but French bases, drawing NATO members into the consequences of the conflict without providing a clean Article 5 trigger. And they position themselves diplomatically so that India, Pakistan, and China are all expressing sympathy or solidarity. Trump is posting about interest rates. Iran is restructuring regional alliances. Trump is reacting tweet by tweet. Iran is building an alternative security architecture in real time, and the contrast is becoming impossible for any serious observer to ignore. You do not counter a strategic network by throwing tantrums on social media. You counter it by building something better. Right now, the United States is not building anything. It is burning through credibility, munitions, and alliances simultaneously, while the man at the top cannot put together a coherent sentence about why this war started. So, what does this actually mean for you? Start with your wallet. Oil prices are surging because the Strait of Hormuz, through which roughly 20% of the world's petroleum supply passes, is functionally closed to Western shipping. Gas prices are climbing. They are not coming down while this conflict continues. Trump is demanding the Federal Reserve cut interest rates, but inflation is accelerating. Cutting rates into surging inflation would be pouring gasoline on an economic fire. Your groceries, your rent, your mortgage, your commute, everything is getting more expensive because of a war launched without a plan by a man who cannot articulate why he started it. Now, zoom out further. Defense systems are being depleted. Ballistic missile interceptors stockpiled for contingencies involving Taiwan, the Korean Peninsula, and Eastern Europe are being fired over Iraqi airspace at Iranian drones. Every interceptor expended in this theater is one unavailable somewhere else. The strategic reserves of the most powerful military on earth are being burned in a conflict that was entirely optional. And when Gulf states restructure their security arrangements around Iran instead of the United States, those partnerships, those defense contracts, those economic relationships do not snap back because the political weather changes. Once a nation restructures its security architecture around a new partner, the new alignment becomes the baseline. The jobs, the contracts, the influence follow the new routes and they do not come back. Where does this go from here? There are three realistic paths forward. Scenario one, the managed de escalation behind the scenes. Business leaders, military commanders, and whatever remains of the diplomatic apparatus convince Trump that this war is politically unsurvivable. Gas prices are destroying his numbers. Markets are cratering. A face-saving arrangement is brokered through back channels, perhaps through India or China. Trump declares total victory regardless of reality. But even in this best case, the structural damage is permanent. Gulf states have already begun their security pivot. European allies have already internalized that America cannot secure the Strait of Hormuz alone. The credibility gap does not close with a handshake and a photo opportunity. Scenario two, the domino realignment. Other middle powers watch the Gulf pivot and replicate the playbook. Asian nations accelerate independent security hedging. European defense integration moves from discussion into deployment. A gravitational center forms that does not orbit Washington. The United States remains the largest military power on Earth, but it is no longer the unquestioned hub. It becomes one option among several, and in geopolitics, once you become optional, you never return to essential on the same terms. Scenario three, the escalation spiral. This is the scenario nobody wants to name out loud, but it must be on the table. Iran escalates further, hitting additional allied installations, activating proxy networks, expanding the theater. Trump, cornered by political pressure and personal ego, escalates in return. Tactical strikes become strategic bombardment. Regional war becomes something the textbooks will need a new chapter for. Alliances fracture under the pressure of forced choices. Trade routes restructure in ways that take a decade to untangle. Every military planner in the Pentagon has this scenario in a classified folder. The only question is whether the man in the Oval Office has the discipline and judgment to keep it there. Here is what needs to be understood. Regardless of which scenario unfolds, the old architecture is not coming back. The relationship between the United States and its Gulf partners will never be what it was. The assumption that Washington can unilaterally project power anywhere on the planet without consequence has been shattered. Not by an enemy, by a president who launched a war without preparation, without authorization, and without a coherent explanation for why it was happening. Even if Trump leaves office tomorrow, the lesson has been absorbed by every capital on earth. You never place all of your strategic reliance in one basket. You diversify, you hedge, you build alternatives, and once those alternatives exist, they do not disappear when the political winds shift. They become the new normal. Trump did not launch this war to reshape the global order. He launched it because he could not say no to a phone call. But the reshaping is happening anyway, and the irony is extraordinary. The man who promised America first has engineered a world where America is increasingly optional. Iran did not dismantle American credibility. Donald Trump did that himself. Iran simply made sure the whole world was watching when it happened. So tell me, did this war reveal the limits of American power, or did it create them? Is the Gulf pivot toward Iran a temporary hedge or a permanent realignment? And when the history of this era is written, will it conclude that one man's impulsiveness cost a superpower its place at the center of the world? Drop your answers in the comments. I read every single one. Subscribe, because the next chapter, the Strait of Hormuz standoff, the Gulf Security Summit, the Federal Reserve decision, the congressional authorization battle is coming fast. This story is not slowing down. Do not look away. This content is commentary and analysis for informational purposes only. It does not constitute financial, legal, or geopolitical advice. Consult qualified professionals before making any decisions based on the material presented.